In this video, I want to show you a couple of interesting ways of creating different bass lines. So we have this simple kick, and then let's see, we have this delay method. With this one, you can get that galloping bass sound. And for this one, I'm using this delay effect with an optional corpus, which currently is not active, but if I enable it, and then I have this autopan effect, which sort of creates that sidechain effect. You see, so this is way too overpowering, but with it enabled. So here I'm just using for this corpus, for the tune, I'm using this fundamental from the kick that you can inspect with this spectrum, and make sure you select this to a higher resolution. And then that way you can monitor fundamental harmonic. And then you can use that, but feel free to experiment with different tunes until you find the sound that you want. And also, just for this video, I have this aux channel just to create a wider sound. Which has these settings, so like I have this saturator with a delay with the has effect on it, a bit of phasing, some echo for that delay, and a bit of reverb sound. And I made sure to cut off the low frequencies, and it's fully wet. And then again an autopan for that sidechainy sound, and this I'm not using it. So yeah, there you have it. This is the first one. Next, you have this reverb sort of method to create bassline. And with this reverb, you create the rumble effect. So I have two different reverb types. One of them is a simple reverb with some stereo widening on it, on EQ8 to remove the high frequencies, and a utility just to make sure the bass is set to mono. Because if I increase this stereo, the bass will probably go into stereo, and we don't want that to happen. And lastly, there is a compressor just to squish the waveform a bit, just to bring the lower volume a bit up. And then a different approach to this is to use a convolution reverb, which in this case I'm using in parallel with another algorithmic reverb. So I have these settings with this shimmer algorithm. And then for this one, I also have this pre-delay set to 187, which you might have seen this. This is a Max for Live plugin, which just tells you what millisecond timings you need for different time divisions. So in my case, I want to go for 1/8, which is this 187.5, which is what I have right here. And then without it, it sounds like this. So yeah, it depends on what you're after. I personally like this effect. And then if you want to use this method, feel free to experiment with different settings, like different algorithms. Then moving on, there is this corpus or physical modeling method, which gets this kick as an input, and then it processes it using this Corpus Ableton's plugin with a bit of delay on it, and it sounds this way. For this one, after putting this corpus and delay on it, I noticed the bass isn't as full as before. So what I did in this case is I just inverted the phase onto the left and the right. And then lastly, another autopan for an additional sidechain effect, even though I put this compressor on the whole group for these. And then again, with this corpus, feel free to experiment with different values for the tune. But I opted to go with 52, which is my fundamental for this kick. And for this one, I'm placing this sound in between the kicks. So like if my kicks are here, here, and here, by delaying what input's coming over here, it's sort of like placing them here and here and so on. But without this delay effect, you get this bass. It depends what you're after. Lastly, I have this frequency shifting method. Again, I'm getting the input from my kick with a bit of delay. And then I'm just boosting this 144 frequency, and it sounds like this. So for all of these, I used the input coming from this kick, and for the following ones, I have just some instruments like oscillators, sound generating plugins. So I have this one which places this sound just in between the kicks. So like if your kick was on this, you have this just in between them. There's not much going on over here. I have this sine wave onto the first oscillator. I made sure this is set to the first one. And then the second one is a saw with only 4 harmonics. And then they both have the same sort of envelope, almost the same. And I think that's pretty much it, with a bit of saturation on it. I think this is the most common one. So yeah, this is a cool way to do it. Then this one, which has it's like when you place the hi-hats, like 4, just in between each kick you have 4 of these. It's just not the way to create such sounds, so feel free to experiment with this as well. Then we have this 1/16 with 4 different sounds. This is how people build their kicks in this trance genre, where you have 4 kicks for each one main kick. So like this, and then you have 4 of these. And this is just a simple kick sample. You can experiment with all sorts of kicks for this. I definitely pumped up the saturation on this one with a bit of autopan, some erosion to give it a bit of movement, so it's not so static. Then the last one in this category is this micro tonal method. I don't know what to call it. I usually do this in modular with my Eurorack system, but it's basically you have this synth which is just one note. Then I have some modulation in this vital instrument where the pitch is modulated by these steps, and that way I just create this effect, and I just have just a bit of modulation over here, and then some random on this cutoff, just so it's not so static. And then a bonus one, this is a triplet bass, and you basically need to have 3 notes in between each kick at equal distance. In Ableton you can do this by pressing Control and 3 or Command 3, and that way you toggle between this grid, like the triplet or the normal 4x4 one, and then you place 3 of these, and then you get this. Haven't got much going on here. It's just a really small modulation on this pitch, just to make it sound a bit less static. And then when you use this method, it also sounds really fun and cool if you use a triplet swing for the drums as well. So like with this one goes really well. where again, once you press Command 3, you will see this triplet grid, and then you can place the hi-hats. You would normally place them here, I guess, but now you will place them here. You see the difference? Cool. There is another method, one where you use a different sample, a different kick, for example, and then you move its starting point just a bit later. So like in my case, I have this shaman drum. I recorded this shaman drum about a year ago. But you can use any sample for this. Normally, you'd want to use one which has some bassy sound in it, like, I don't know, kick drum or maybe some toms, who knows. And then I have two more left. One of them is just a Punchbox instance, where I guess both the kick and its sub bass or the tail is synthesized through this same interface. And it sounds like this. I noticed that with this amp plugin, if I increase this knob to full wet, I lose some of the bass frequencies. So that's why I decided to go with this percentage. And then lastly, I have this kick, which is made out of two layers. So I have the main kick, or the body, and then for the bass line or the kick's tail, I have this instance of Punchbox, which sounds like this. So then together they sound like this. And for this one, I'm using this 909. I'm using this 909 type with a bit of decay, some bit crushing, distortion, filter, and equalizer. So that was it for the bass lines. I will see you maybe another time.